Hello there, my name is Brendan. Today we're going to be talking about prime and composite numbers in math. Before we get started, I would like to formally apologize. At the time of recording this, I'm just getting over a cold, and so my voice is pretty much gone. Please be patient with me. I will try and make my voice as clear as possible. With that in mind, let's get started by figuring out what exactly is a prime number. So, a prime number is a number that can only be made by multiplying 1 and the number. So in other words, when you're multiplying and trying to figure out if there's any other number that goes with it, you can't find anything except multiplying that number by 1 to get it. Some quick and easy examples of that are the numbers 3, 5, and 7. Because we can't get anything except for 1 times 3 to make 3, or 1 times 5 to make 5, or 1 times 7 to make 7. So we know that 3, 5, and 7 are all considered prime numbers because of that. And most people's next logical thought would be, well, 9 might be one, right? But unfortunately, 9 is not a prime number. And it's not a prime number because you can't just make it with 1 times 9. You can also make it with 3 times 3. So with that in mind then, if 9's not a prime number, what do we technically have to call it? What do we call prime? What do we call numbers that are not prime numbers? Well, if it's not a prime number, then it's going to be a composite number. Composite numbers are any numbers that have more multiples than just 1 in itself. 9 falls into this category because it has at least 3 multiples, because it has 1 and 9, and then it also has 3. 3 technically is done twice, so we don't need to repeat it. So that means that it's 3 multiples instead of 1. Or 3 multiples instead of 4. My bad. The easiest way to test for composite numbers is seeing if they divide into any other numbers. Now, some common examples of these are going to be numbers like 4, 6, 8, and 10. These ones are all considered composite, and they're all even numbers that divide by 2. And so we can see through that all even numbers, because they divide by 2, are all considered composite. So anytime you see a 4, a 6, an 8, or a 0 at the end, it's a composite number because it's divisible by 2. Now, there are some other ones that are a little bit harder to see, but are still divisible by other numbers. And so you have numbers like 9, 15, 21, or 49. These ones are all also considered composite numbers, but it's a little bit harder at times to figure out that they are composite numbers because you have to do a little bit more work to figure it out. Now, when it comes to prime and composite numbers, there are 2 exceptions to these rules that we're going to go over real quick. This isn't something that's really necessary, it's just a nice reminder at times. The 2 exceptions to the prime and composite rules are 1 and 0. Now the prime and composite rules, are based around positive numbers. And so 1 is technically a prime number, but it doesn't fall under the prime category because it has to have at least 2 multiples, and it only has 1 itself. So it cannot be considered a prime number, nor can it be considered a composite number because it doesn't have anything except 1. 0 is very similar to that, except that it has no value at all, and it can't be multiplied to make anything but itself. So it is also neither prime nor composite. Now, despite, or rather in regard to prime and composite numbers, let's go over a few quick and easy ways to figure out if a number is composite or prime. Now, after we get past the first 10, or at least the first 20, things might get a little bit harder to figure out whether something is prime or composite. And so, to make things easier, here's a few quick questions that you can ask that will help limit down whether it's prime or composite. The first question is it an even number? If it ends with a 2, a 4, a 6, an 8, or a 0, then it's an even number, and that means that it can be divided by 2, making it a composite number. If it's not an even number, then the next question that we can ask is, does it end with a 5? If it ends with a 5, then it's divisible by 5, which means that it's also a composite number. If the answer is still no, if it's not an even number that doesn't end with 5, then we go to the next question, which is kind of a kicker at times. Does it pass the threes test? Now, what the threes test is just another way to see if a number divides by 3 without having to see if it divides by 3 going the long way around. So the first thing you do is you add the numbers that make up your multiple and see if they make up another number that's divisible by 3. So to kind of give a more clear example of that, you take 129 as your example here. You add the 3 numbers that make 129, 1 plus 2 plus 9, you get 12. And 12 is a number that is divisible by 3, because 12 divided by 3 would make 4. And so then if you're looking at the number and you decide to divide it in the long run, 129 divided by 3 is equal to 43. So either way you look at it, it's a composite number. But passing the threes test just simply means, does it divide by 3? And then of course the last question is it divisible by 7? Now unfortunately there's no real simple, quick way to test this one. You just have to divide it out by 7 yourself. But once you get through the end of it, if you've gone through all 4 questions and the answer has been no every time, then your number is prime. If you've answered yes to any one of these 4 questions, then your number is a composite number. Now that we've gotten through the basics of that, let's do a quick check. So we're going to see if the following numbers are composite numbers or prime numbers. So if we look at number 1, we have the number 31. So going through our quick check again, it's not an even number, and it's not a number ending in 5. So our first 2 are already no's. If we're going by our threes rule, 3 and 1 equals 4, so that does not work. It's not divisible by 3. Does it divide by 7? No, this one does not divide by 7. The closest we would get with 7 would be 35. So that means that this is a prime number. Going through the next one, number 2, we have 25. So it's not an even number, but it does end with a 5, and so we know that this one will be divisible by 5, making it a composite number. And if we were to double check that, 5 times 5 is 25, so we know that that's true. For the next 2, for 3 and 4, we have 12 and we have 8. Both of these are even numbers, and since they're even numbers, we know that they can be divided by 2. We know that 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So that makes both 3 and 4 composite numbers as well. If we look at number 5, they were trying to throw us off. They asked us if 1 is a prime or a composite number. We know that technically it could be considered a prime number, but it only has one multiple and does not fall into the category, and so it is neither prime nor composite. Now 13, we have the same situation as 31. It's not an even number. It doesn't have a 5. It doesn't work with the rule of threes, or the threes test, and it's not divisible by 7. The closest we would get for that one would be 14. So we know that number 6 is also a prime number. Looking at 27, it's not an even number. It's not ending in 5, but if we do the threes test on it, 2 plus 7 equals 9, or if we do 27 divided by 3, we get 9. And so we know that this number is a composite number because it's divisible by 3. And now looking at the last one, we have 237. So since it has a 7 on there at the end, It's clearly not an even number, nor does it end in 5. So now we're going to put it through the 3's test real quick. 2 plus 3 plus 7 is 12. 12 is easily divisible by 3, and so this follows the 3's testing correctly, making it divisible by 3. If we go the long way around and divide it, we would find that 3 goes into 23 7 times, which would be 21, which would leave us with 27, which would leave us with a total of 20, well, no, not 20. Sorry. How about I stop trying to just crunch it out in my head and I actually write it out? So, if we're looking at this, 3 goes into 23 7 times, and goes into 27 9 times. So our answer would be 79, and so we still know that it's a composite number. All right, so that's all that we have for today. Hopefully this has helped you figure out how to do primes and composite numbers, and hopefully you have a few quick and easy ways to remember how to do things. So just remember, if you're looking for the difference between a prime and a composite number, ask yourself, does it end with an even number? Does it end with a 5? Is it divisible by 3? Or is it divisible by 7? Thank you, and have a good day.